welcome back to Dimebag Darren on the Omnivox channel, and we are back for chapter number 6 of Isaac Asimov's Foundation. Tweak the camera there. And speaking of tweaking the camera, we're doing something a little different when it comes to tweaking the camera, and that's this here. So hopefully you've gotten yourself all caught up through chapters 1 through 5, because here we go on chapter 6 of Isaac Asimov's Foundation, read by Dimebag Darren. The Trial. Chapter 6. The trial, Gale supposed it to be one, although it bore little resemblance legalistically to the elaborate trial techniques that Gale had read of, had not lasted long. It was in its third day, yet already Gale could no longer stretch his memory back far enough to embrace its beginning. He himself been but a little pecked at. The heavy guns were trained on Dr. Selden himself. Harry Selden, however, sat there unperturbed. To Gale, he was the only spot of stability remaining in the world. The audience was small and drawn exclusively from the barons of the empire. Press and public were excluded, and it was doubtful that any significant number of outsiders even knew that there was a trial of Selden being conducted. The atmosphere was one of unrelieved hostility towards the defendants. 5 of the Commission of Public Safety sat behind the raised desk. They wore scarlet and gold uniforms and shining, close-fitting plastic caps that were the signs of their judicial function. In the center was Chief Commissioner Lin Chen. Gale had never before seen so great a lord and watched him with fascination. Chen, throughout the trial, rarely said a word. He made it quite clear that much speech was beneath his dignity. The commission's advocate consulted his notes, and the examination continued with Selden still on the stand. Question. Let us see, Dr. Selden. How many men are now engaged in the project of which you are the head? 50 mathematicians. Including Gale Dornick? No, Gale Dornick is the 51st. Oh, so we have 51 then. Search your memory, Dr. Selden. Perhaps there are 52, 53, or perhaps even more? Dr. Dornick has not formally joined my organization. When he does, the membership will be 51. It is now 50, as I had said. Not perhaps nearly 100,000? Mathematicians? No. I did not say mathematicians. Are there 100,000 in all capacities? In all capacities, your figure may be correct. May be. I say it is. I say the men in your project number 9. May be. I say it is. I say the men in your project number 98,008. Maybe. I say it is. I say the men in your project number 98,572. I believe you're counting women and children. 98,572 individuals is the intent of my statement. There is no need to quibble. I accept the figures. Let us drop that for a moment, and then take up another matter, which we've already discussed at some length. Would you repeat, Dr. Selden, your thoughts concerning the future of Trantor? I have said, and I say again, that Trantor will lie in ruins within the next 5 centuries. You do not consider your statements a disloyal one? No, sir. Scientific truth is beyond loyalty and disloyalty. You are sure that your statements represent scientific truth? I am. On what basis? On the basis of the mathematics of psychohistory. Can you prove the mathematics is valid? Only to another mathematician. Your claim, then, is that your truth is of such an esoteric a nature that it is beyond the understanding of a plain man. It seemed to me that truth should be clearer than that, less mysterious, more open to the mind. It presents no difficulties to some minds. The physics of energy transfer, which we know as thermodynamics, has been clear and true throughout the history of man since mythical ages, and yet there may be people present who would find it impossible to design a power engine. People of high intelligence, too. I doubt if the learned commissioners. At one point, one of the commissioners leaned towards the advocate. His words were not heard above the hissing of the voice. His words were not heard, but the hissing of the voice carried a certain asperity. The advocate flushed and interrupted Selden. We are not here to listen to speeches, Dr. Selden. Let us assume that you've made your point. Let me suggest to you that your predictions of disaster may be intended to destroy public confidence in the imperial government for purposes of your own. That is not so. Let me suggest that you intend to claim that a period of time preceding the so-called ruin will Let me suggest that you intend to claim that a period of time preceding the so-called ruin of Trantor will be filled with unrest of various types. That is correct. And by the mere prediction thereof, you hope to bring it about, and then to have an army of 100,000 available. In the first place, that is not so. And if it were, investigation would show you that barely 10,000 are men of military age, and none of these has training in arms. Are you acting as an agent for another? I am not in the pay of any man, Mr. Advocate. You're entirely disinterested. You're serving science. I am. Then let us see how. Can the future be changed, Dr. Selden? Obviously. The court may explode in the next few hours, or it may not. If it did, the future would undoubtedly be changed in some minor respects. You quibble, Dr. Selden. Can the overall history of the human race be changed? Yes. Easily? No, with great difficulty. Why? The psychohistoric trend of a planet full of people contains a huge inertia. To be changed, it must be met with something possessing a similar inertia. Either as many people must be concerned, or if the number of people is relatively small, enormous time for change must be allowed. Do you understand? I think I do. Trantor need not be ruined if a great many people decide to act so, that it will not. That is right. As many as 100,000 people? No, sir. That is far too few. Are you sure? Consider that Trantor has a population of over 40 billions. Consider further that the trend leading to ruin does not belong to Trantor alone, but to the empire as a whole, and the empire contains nearly a quintillion human beings. I see. Then perhaps 100,000 people can change the trend if they and their descendants labor for 500 years? I'm afraid not. 500 years is too short a time. Aha. In that case, Dr. Selden, we're left with this deduction to be made from your statements. You have gathered 100,000 people within the confines of your project. These are insufficient to change the history of Trantor within 500 years. In other words, they cannot prevent the destruction of Trantor no matter what they do. You are unfortunately correct. On the other hand, your 100,000s are intended for no illegal purpose. Exactly. In that case, Dr. Selden, now attend, sir, most carefully, because we will want a considered answer. What is the purpose of your 100,000? The advocate's voice had grown strident. He had sprung his trap, backed Selden into a corner, driven him astutely from any possibility of answering. There was a rising buzz of conversation, at which swept through the ranks of the peers in the audience and invaded even the row of commissioners. They swayed towards one another in their scarlet and gold. Only the chief remained uncorrupted. Harry Selden remained unmoved. He waited for the babble to evaporate. To minimize the effects of that destruction. And exactly what do you mean by that? The explanation is simple. The coming destruction of Trantor is not an event in itself, isolated in the scheme of human development. It will be the climax to an intense drama which began centuries ago and which is accelerating its pace continuously. I refer, gentlemen, to the developing decline and fall of the Galactic Empire. The buzz became a dull roar. The advocate, unheeded, was yelling, "You are openly declaring that," and stopped because of the cries of treason from the audience that showed that the point had been made without any hammering. Slowly, the chief commissioner raised his gavel once and let it drop. The sound was that of a mellow gong. When the reverberation ceased, the gabble of the audience also did. The advocate took a deep breath. Do you realize, Dr. Selden, that you're speaking of an empire that has stood for 12,000 years and through all the vicissitudes of the generations, and which has left behind it the good wishes and love of a quadrillion human beings? I am aware of both the present status and past history of the empire. Without disrespect, I must claim a far better knowledge of it than anyone in this room. And you predict its ruin. It is a prediction which is made by mathematics. I pass no moral judgments. Personally, I regret the prospect. Even if the empire were admitted to be a bad thing, an admission I do not make, the state of anarchy which would follow in its fall would be worse. It is that state of anarchy which my project is pledged to fight. The fall of the empire, gentlemen, is a massive thing, however, and not easily fought. It is dictated by rising bureaucracy, a receding initiative, a freezing of caste, a damming of curiosity, and 100 other factors. It's been going on, as I've said, for centuries, and it is too majestic and massive a movement to stop. Is it not obvious to anyone that the empire is as strong as it ever was? The appearance of strength is all about you. It would seem to last forever. However, Mr. Advocate, the rotten tree trunk, until the very moment when the storm blast breaks it in two, has all the appearance of might it had ever had. The storm blast whistles through the branches of the empire even now. Listen with the ears of psychohistory, and you can hear the creaking. We are not here, Dr. Selden, to listen. The empire will vanish, and all its good with it. Its accumulated knowledge will decay, and the order that it has imposed will vanish. Interstellar wars will be endless. Interstellar trade will decay, and populations will decline. Worlds will lose touch with the main body of the galaxy, and so matters will remain. A small voice in the middle of the vast silence. Forever? Psychohistory, which can predict the fall, can make statements concerning the succeeding Dark Ages. The Empire Gentleman, as has just been said, has stood for 12,000 years. The Dark Ages to come will endure not 12, but 30,000 years. A second empire will rise, but in between it and our civilization will be 1,000 generations of human suffering. We must fight that. You contradict yourself. You said earlier that you could not prevent the destruction of Trantor, hence, presumably, the fall, the so-called fall of the Empire. I do not say now that we can prevent the fall, but it is not yet too late to shorten the interregnum which will follow. It's possible, gentlemen, to reduce the duration of anarchy to a single millennium if my group is allowed to act now. We are at a delicate moment in history. The huge, onrushing mass of events must be deflected just a little, just a little. It cannot be much, but it may be enough to remove 29,000 years of misery from human history. How do you propose we do this? By saving the knowledge of the race. The sum of human knowing is beyond any one man, any 1,000 men. With the destruction of our social fabric, science will be broken into 1,000,000 pieces. Individuals will know much of exceedingly tiny facets of what there is to know, but they will be helpless and useless by themselves. The bits of lore, meaningless, will not be passed on. They will be lost through the generations. But if we now prepare a giant summary of all knowledge, it will never be lost. Coming generations will build on it and will not have to rediscover it for themselves. 1 millennia will do the work of 30,000. All this, all my project, my 30,000 men, with their wives and children, are devoting themselves to the preparation of an Encyclopedia Galactica. They will not complete it in their lifetimes. I will not even live to see it barely begun. But by the time Trantor falls, it will be complete, and copies will exist in every major library in the galaxy. The chief commissioner's gavel rose and fell. Harry Selden left the stand and quietly took a seat next to Gal. He smiled and said, "How'd you like the show?" "Good. You stole it. But what happens now?" They'll adjourn the trial and try to come to some private agreement with me. How do you know? To be honest, I don't. It depends on the chief commissioner. I've studied him for years, and I've tried to analyze his workings. But you know how risky it is to introduce the vagaries of an individual into the psychohistoric equations. Yet, I have hopes. And that ends chapter 6 of my favorite book, Isaac Asimov's Foundation. I hope you enjoyed it. We'll be back again for chapter number 7 shortly. Please tune in again, tell your friends, and thank you for listening to Dimebag Darren on the Omnivox channel. Bye for now.